Hey guys, in this week's Casually Criterion episode, we are back and we're here to talk about Black Narcissus. But before that, we're going to talk about Ted Lasso Season 2, Episode 1, The Tomorrow War, and the entirety of Loki, relatively spoiler-free. So if you haven't seen it, don't worry about it. Join us!
To the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinks. My name is Justin, and with me as always is a man who's been Googling sexy short shorts near me. Mike, how you doing?
How'd you know that? I'm well. Thank you for being here with me, Justin. It's good to see you again. It's been a minute since our last recording.
Yeah. And we're not seeing each other technically. We're just hearing each other.
That's true. We don't turn on the cameras when we do this whole recording thing because then I think we'd both have to be more presentable. At least I would have to wear clothes more often.
Yeah. I have very long hair right now, and I ran out of
I've
product
seen it on social media, dude. You need a haircut.
I'm growing it out.
Are you? What are you going for? What look?
I don't know. It gets curly, when I put product in it to keep it from being just crazy, frizzy and everywhere.
Yeah.
So it gets really wavy and very curly.
You start slicking it back.
No. That's weird. But if I don't put product in it, it's super frizzy and it's all over the place. And it would be horrible for anybody to watch on video.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saving me that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
If this is your first time listening to the show, this is a Casually Criterion episode, which is an episode focused on a Criterion Collection film that we like to do usually every other week when we record, where we review a film that is chosen by the listeners from the Criterion Collection. But before we get into the main review, we usually do a News on the March where we talk about recent news and things we've been watching, usually just things we've been watching. So if you haven't seen the movie, you could still listen, and then we will move into the main Casually Criterion review for Black Narcissus, spine number 93.
That's right. And as Mike said, the Criterion films that we review are chosen by the listeners. What we do is at the end of every Criterion episode, after we've reviewed the film, and at the end of this episode, that we do a poll. We have a theme. We each make a choice for a film based on that theme, and then we put those choices out on a poll on our Twitter account, and you can vote. And whichever one gets the most votes, that's what wins. Obviously, I think that's how most polls work.
Yep. And that is what happened with this poll, which is why you are listening to an episode on Black Narcissus versus Tree of Life.
Disappointing.
Could be. That's one way to look at it.
Yeah, well, not that disappointing because we watch Black Narcissus, but,
Indeed.
Whatever. But anyways, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. Like I said, the polls are up on our Twitter, so that's the best place to follow us. If you want to send us any messages, you can DM us on any one of those accounts, or you can send an email to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, you enjoy the show, you want to help other people find it, go into iTunes or whatever platform you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review or a thumbs up review or a like or a follow or a subscribe, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Please and thank you. Okay, if we've got nothing else, I think we can just go ahead and move into News on the March. What do you think?
Yeah, I got nothing else. Let's go.
Let's go.
News on the March.
So, Justin, sir, what have you been watching this week?
Well, I've been, watching various TV shows that I'm in the midst of watching, but the big thing that's come out and is new this week that I've been watching is Season 2 of Ted Lasso. Episode 1 came out last Friday, I believe it was. So we only have the one episode so far, but that season has started, and it's something I've been looking forward to a ton because I really loved the first season. I thought it was excellent. I rewatched the first season over the past couple weeks to get ready for Season 2, just to refresh it in my brain. And watched the first episode of Season 2, and so far I think they still have hit the formula right. They've maintained the magic, the pleasantness of the show.
I agree.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I watched episode 1 of Season 2, and I have not rewatched Ted Lasso recently. I've seen the first season, I think, like 1.5 times. I don't think I finished it on my second watch through when I was watching it with someone else. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And it's not necessarily a show that I laugh out loud about, but it's a show that I enjoy, and it's cute and it's wholesome, right? So I agree with you that like season 2, episode 1 pretty much feels the same tonally. Like it seems like they've found that little niche that they're in, you know, and maybe they've even doubled down on it to a point. Like I think season 2, episode 1 is possibly even a little bit sillier and like happier than even season 1 dared to be in some cases. A lot of the banter back and forth between Ted Lasso and Coach Beard, his little sidekick guy.
Yeah.
But all of that stuff is just extremely wholesome and fun, and yeah, even if it doesn't like set my world on fire, I'm really enjoying it. I like the tone that this show gives off.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. You're right that it's not always laugh out loud funny. I don't know that I've laughed out loud that many times.
And sometimes it's even outright silly. But
yeah,
that's kind of okay. It's kind of aware of itself, I think.
I do think they've done the silliest thing that they've done on the show so far with like what happens in the opening scene, like the cold open.
Yeah, the whole like B plot with like one of the members of the team in season 2, episode 1. Any other show that would be a bridge too far, I think, for silliness. But I don't know, the show kind of wears it on its sleeve, and it's kind of this goofy romp. It's like a rated R kids show in extent. I don't know, you know, because they say like really bad words, and it's about like sex sometimes, right? But yeah. Ultimately, I think it's a show that is best watched with in a family setting, you know, assuming none of the content gets too much crazier.
Yeah. I think as long as they don't, go too far in terms of like rehashing some of the same stuff, like it seems like they brought in some new elements, some different storylines with this one, like someone to, threaten Ted Lasso's like position as king guy around the club, Yeah,
that sort of thing. And some of the other characters are starting on new arcs right now. Like, I guess if you're still listening at this point, you've probably seen season 1. But like season 1, there's a character that basically is aging out of the game. And in season 2, it looks like they're going to set him up to do something completely different, which could end up being really interesting depending on how they go with it.
Yeah. I think I was so skeptical about season 1 because I thought, how can they turn what was originally a 5-minute, commercial or ad for NBC Sports into an entire TV show? And I think I carry that skepticism, or at least I did a little bit with, how can they turn season 1 into more seasons without doing the same thing? And I'm positive that they won't, based on this first episode.
Okay, well.
Not 100% positive, but optimistic that they won't, not positive.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they still got some ground left to explore. I think they have lots of characters that they could start to expand out more as well and start to get to know. Like even in the first episode, we get to know the football is life kid way more than we ever got to know him in season 1.
Yeah, Danny Rojas.
There we go. I was like, I couldn't remember his name. I'm not good at the names. I know Ted Lasso, and that's about it.
Yeah. He runs around yelling his name a lot, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
He also says football is life a lot, so that's why I went there.
That's true.
But yeah, anything else we want to talk about with Ted Lasso season 2 so far?
Nope. If you haven't watched it and you're listening to this, I'd say watch it. Watch not season 2, but start with season 1. It's a good show.
It is. It's a quick watch too.
Yeah, only 10 episodes for the first season, and I assume the same for the second season.
Yeah. Wait, I thought the first episode was 8 episodes, or first season was 8 episodes long.
I think it was 10.
Oh, well, whatever. It's a good length.
Yeah, it's 10 episodes.
Okay. Well, what do I know?
Not much, but you might know something about a thing that you watched this week. So do you want to talk about that?
Sure. And surprisingly, I don't know that much about it, even though I saw it. It's called The Tomorrow War. It's on Amazon Prime right now. It stars Chris Pratt and Yvonne Stravinsky. I don't know how you say her name, but she's great. She's Miranda Lawson in the Mass Effect trilogy of games, and then she's also Mrs. Waterford or in The Handmaid's Tale. I don't remember her name, but she's in those things, and she's good. The Tomorrow War, however, is not that good.
Oh.
It's not terrible. I don't want to write it off the bat right away. Like, if you want like a cool science fiction action movie, this has a lot that you will like. It's got cool special effects. It's even got a cool concept. It's like there's a war that's taking place in the future. And so humans have traveled back in time, and they are basically drafting people from the past to go fight in the future in a war that they don't even understand the enemy yet. They haven't seen the enemy yet. They're just going immediately into like a scenario where they're fighting, and that concept is pretty interesting. So they're basically like shooting forward, like I guess like 10 years or something like that, like to where like the war is already going on and we're losing. And so people are just getting drafted by like the thousands. And you're taking it from Chris Pratt's perspective. He's a science teacher who's got a family, and then he gets drafted to go to war, and he doesn't know how long he'll be gone, but he goes to try and save the world. And in the future, he may or may not meet people that he knows from his past that he just left. So I don't know. It's pretty interesting, like I said, concept-wise, but execution-wise, it feels like a very hollow Edge of Tomorrow or Live, Die, Repeat.
That's what it reminded me of, and it might have just been the tomorrow in the title, or that's kind of what I thought, but
yeah, I mean,
not.
It seems like they're trying to evoke that. Maybe it is the tomorrow in the title, which is why I drew the comparison, because it's not like a Groundhog's Day situation at all. It's not the same plot, but it's very much like, alien invaders. We're out of our element. Yeah. We're losing. There's a war going on.
Time travel to an extent.
Yeah. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have to just kind of accept the time travel and ignore like paradoxes, or do they touch on the possibility of horrendous butterfly effects by bringing thousands of people to the future to fight and probably die?
Right. So I think it's more like it doesn't really fit with like a butterfly effect type scenario, like a Sound of Thunder, but like what it does, I think, is it plays kind of fast and loose. So like I think it's weird because I don't want to spoil anything, but a key plot of like Act 2 is him wanting to change things, like from the beginning. I don't know. I don't want to get too much more into it than that, but I would say it's more akin to something like Avengers Endgame.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds familiar, like something else we might talk about in a bit.
Maybe. And let's just get there now, because I'm done with the Tomorrow War. I would say, see it. It's okay. It's got some okay performances. Chris Pratt's fine.
Yeah, if you just want an action movie.
Yeah, if you want to turn your brain off, do that, It's not as good as, like, I don't know, I rewatched Speed last night with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's what I thought when I was watching it. So, you could do worse than the Tomorrow War, but you could do better, and you could watch Speed.
Yeah, that's on our list to watch, mine and my wife's, because we've been watching different action movies, Keanu that she's never seen.
And Sandra Bullock were so good looking in 1994. They're both good looking now, but good Lord.
But then, yeah. We actually recently rewatched Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2.
Yeah?
Speaking of turn your brain off action movies.
Yeah? And how do those hold up?
They are very silly.
Yeah. Especially the second one starts getting really silly.
Yeah.
I heard the third one is like the best one, though.
Yeah, that's also on our list to finish up the trilogy, which I'm sure we'll do relatively soon. I'm excited. I don't think you can deny Will Smith's charm or Martin Lawrence's charisma and energy.
No, I don't think so. They're both likable guys. Or Will Smith, not so much in the past like couple decades.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think Will Smith needs to, do some PR work. I don't know. His family make him more unlikable.
Yeah, that's maybe his fault, maybe not. I don't know.
It's certainly not his fault. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
He chose them. Well, I guess he didn't choose his kids, but he helped raise them and contribute to why they're so crappy.
Yeah, my wife follows him on either TikTok or Instagram, one of the two, and she sends me posts of him doing like funny, silly things. So seems like on social media he's being charming. Just
maybe. Yeah, I'm pretty out of touch
not,
with social media. I'm not the best.
Yeah, me too. I the only things that I know are like things that she sends me and says, "Hey, watch this."
Yeah, I pretty much
Otherwise,
don't ever. I haven't even opened Facebook in a minute.
It's probably for the best.
No, I think so.
Yeah, but moving on.
Yeah, so Tomorrow War. Watch it or don't. Doesn't matter.
Okay, I will or I won't.
Yeah, you probably won't.
Probably not.
All right.
But I did watch Loki.
Yes.
And we want to talk about that because that ended. And I think when it started, you talked about it on one of our last episodes and suggested it to me. I hadn't seen it yet and I was kind of skeptical. But I did watch it and I've seen it all. as have you. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, so basically, I'll just be upfront. I enjoyed Loki immensely, more than I thought I would. Loki has never been a character that I enjoyed that much. I found him to be kind of annoying in the actual MCU movies themselves because he was so, like, one note, and it felt like the same arc for, like, 3 different movies that they stuck him in. It seemed like in Thor 2 and 3, at least, he had the exact same arc. So I was thinking to myself, how could a show about Loki be good? You know, especially after I was so jazzed on, spoilers for Infinity War, I guess, but the way he met his fate in Infinity War. I thought that was a good ending for that character.
Yeah.
And so whenever they set up this concept in Endgame, the very next Avengers movie, I thought, oh, okay, all right, well, here we go. But I gotta say, this show really is better than most of the MCU so far. I am so glad they made this show, and so glad that they got the writers and the talent behind the camera involved as much as they did, because not only does this make the MCU more interesting, make me like Loki more in retrospect, I would say it also is just better and more intriguing and interesting as far as sci-fi concepts than most of what the MCU has done so far. And plus, it's not a traditional hero origin story. It's like Loki's not a hero. So it's a little bit more interesting in that regard, in my opinion. So that's where I'm sitting. Justin, where are you sitting on Loki season 1?
Almost exactly the same place that you are, to be honest.
Yeah?
So I don't know how much more I have to add to what you've said, but I do want to echo, I think maybe my favorite thing that you said and that I totally agree with is that just in terms of a sci-fi concept, what the show is doing is really cool and really interesting. And it's a fun world that if this wasn't an MCU thing, it would still be really cool.
Yeah, if you just put Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson into a cool sci-fi show.
Yeah, and it just so happens to be Loki, this character we already know, and, you know, like you, I didn't really care for one way or the other. But, you know, I guess it's just kind of bonus that it's MCU, and now, like you, I can say, yeah, this might be my favorite thing in all of the MCU. Yeah,
it doesn't trump the original Iron Man, in my opinion. That movie still holds up. I watched that the other day. I think the original Iron Man is pretty solid, but
probably so.
Loki is something completely different. I think the series format works better for like pulpy MCU entertainment like this.
Yeah.
Sometimes, sometimes you'll get a Falcon and Winter Soldier, which was 6 episodes, and I think could have been 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked WandaVision too, and wasn't as big on Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I will say that now that Loki's over, I watched it, by myself, but I'm trying to convince my wife to watch it because I already want to rewatch it.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Which is unusual for, at least so far, for the MCU series.
I feel like I don't know how required it's going to be going forward, right? But like I enjoy how it's going to seemingly change things going forward. I don't know for how long. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure the status quo will always reset itself in the MCU every few movies to kind of rein it in, but I don't know. It has implications to where I'm sure ultimately whenever they show up in the movies, I'll be like, okay, yep, could have seen that coming. But for now, whenever nothing else has come out yet, it seems so like sky's the limit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think... Go ahead.
I was just saying, until they actually like start introducing the implications for the end of Loki season 1, and I start, seeing the disappointing products that they give me, I'm excited for where it could go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was you and I and maybe Chris talking about, was it Jonathan Majors?
Mm-hmm.
At the end, his character, not that I want to say much more about it, but he could be very important going forward.
Yeah, it feels like, they set up Jonathan Majors in a really interesting way to where, I mean, I have no idea what to expect from this guy. Like, so at this point from now on, if you don't want to hear spoilers on Loki season 1, just skip to the movie. It'll be timestamped in the show notes.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we've given them adequate time.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jonathan Majors. That is the most fascinating thing to me, because at the end of Loki season 1, we find him as He Who Remains, right? Who is the one who's been pruning all these timelines and keeping the great timeline relatively clean and branch free, and all that. So you can apparently have different realities as long as they aren't too dissimilar. I don't really know how it works exactly, but he keeps anything from getting too crazy. And at the end, they kill him. And the last thing he says is, "See you soon," meaning other versions of him in the multiverse that now exists are going to start showing up. And according to him, in Loki season 1, he's the better natured of all his alternate versions, right? Like he's the more agreeable one.
Yeah.
So it's really intriguing because I thought his performance in Loki was really charming and fun and easy to watch as a man who's sort of losing his mind at the end of time. But now, other versions of him, who knows what his performance could be like? And he's such a talented actor that I'm excited to see, like, how many Kangs are we going to see, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll be fun. And I'm curious if he will be, you know, eventually like the Thanos sort of figure for the next round of MCU
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, he could be, and I wouldn't be opposed to it. It's pretty cool. It's a cool concept, I think, if they do it right and Jonathan Majors keeps being really inventive with his performance.
Yeah, I think so. But also if they just bring it back, because there is going to be more seasons of Loki.
Yep.
Am I
at least a season
that?
2.
Yeah. So
I wonder, though, because here we have like 3 movies coming up, right? We have Spider-Man 3, we have Doctor Strange 2. Maybe those are it. I can't remember. But I feel like those movies have to play into in between the seasons of Loki. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if Loki's going to work as like a watch season 1 and then watch season 2.
yeah, isn't the Doctor Strange title something multiverse?
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And it's directed by Sam Raimi, which has me the most excited.
Oh, yeah, that is cool.
Because Sam Raimi directs some pretty fun horror. It's like funny horror, and I don't know. I think usually they don't get such auteur-driven... I don't want to call Sam Raimi an auteur, but, you know, I don't know. They don't get such, like, visionary directors in the MCU, usually.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that, like, they allow him to just, you know, make a bonkers movie.
Yeah, well, they probably will, I think, because it worked out for Taika Waititi.
That's true. Everyone seems to really like that movie.
Yeah.
Except for you.
So I need to watch it again. I'll go that far.
Yeah. So, yeah, other than that, I think we're done. Do we have anything else about Loki or the MCU?
Well, you know, obviously Tom Hiddleston is good, and of course we have Owen Wilson being charming as ever, and in like a perfectly cast, like quirky little role for him. But also just the female version of Loki, Sophia DiMartino.
Yeah, DiMartino. Yes. She's great.
She's really good. I like her a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I would hate to undersell the surrounding cast around Tom Hiddleston in this show because I think that's also the key to its success as well is, you know, everyone seems kind of reined in. They're all on the same page. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think the delivery, the type of humor, I think is really dry. I think everyone kind of got it. I wonder if having a writer from Rick and Morty really helped sell the sci-fi aspect of these concepts really well, in a way that the MCU has traditionally not been so concerned with.
Probably so.
Because
I don't know.
I think no matter what you think about Rick and Morty as a show, I think no one can deny that there are some episodes in that show that are just like executed as far as like sci-fi concepts, like brilliantly.
Yeah, it's really inventive. That's my favorite thing about the show is just seeing like what is the concept of each episode, what crazy inventive thing they're gonna do. Like it's pretty funny sometimes. Yeah,
it's just, but more than anything, it's just a really cool sci-fi show.
Yeah, and just another actress too that I want to shout out, Wunmi Musaka.
And who is she?
She's Hunter B-15.
Oh, the one who helps blow the lid off of it, sort of.
Yeah. She was in another show that I watched within like the last year on Netflix. I think I talked about on the show called The End of the Fucking World.
Oh, yeah, you did talk about that show.
Yeah, she's a detective in that, and I liked her in that. I thought she was really good in that show. So whenever I went to watch Loki and I saw her, I was like, hey.
Yeah, being a detective, no less.
Yeah.
Well, sort of.
So. Cool.
But yeah, I'm excited to see where all these characters ultimately end up. And so, yeah, Loki Season 2, I'm excited. Oh, real quick, before we move on, Disney Gallery released like an episode of like Avengers Assembled, which is an hour-long like making of documentary of Loki.
Oh, cool.
And it's narrated by Tom Hiddleston, and it's got behind-the-scenes clips of like Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston hanging out. And it's pretty funny because Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston talk about Shakespeare.
Oh yeah, I've seen people commenting about this.
Dude, it's pretty funny.
I don't know
like
what happens.
Owen Wilson, just like I could tell he really likes Tom Hiddleston because he always like he says like Tom Hiddleston's so polite because they're talking about Hamlet or whatever, and Tom Hiddleston's talking about playing Hamlet, and Owen Wilson was talking about how he's just listening, absorbing the story. And then whenever he was over, I guess out of politeness alone, Tom Hiddleston's like, well, have you ever played Hamlet? And Owen Wilson apparently finds that really funny. Because he's like, you're the only person who's ever thought to ask me that. He's like, I can't imagine like other directors I've worked with, like Ben Stiller, asking or wondering if Owen's ever played Hamlet. And it's the whole thing's just really charming, even though I just explained the entire joke to you right here. So
yeah. Now I don't have to watch it.
Yeah, I saved you I did the best part for you here. But anyways, watch it if you like Loki and Owen Wilson, which you probably do.
I do, as has been observed here.
Yeah. Okay, I think now I'm done talking about Loki.
Okay, me too. So, are we ready to move on?
Yeah, let's do it. Black Narcissus, spine number 93.
Let's go.
This is the story of a high endeavor that tried and tested a woman in the remote background of Asia. The story of a prince and a beggar maid, and of a nun who gave up her vows.
Why should we want to keep you here against your will? Because you're all jealous of me. Especially you.
The clash of strong personalities.
I understood you wanted to see me.
We want to talk to you on business.
I suppose you want to talk to me on anything else. Sorry.
I don't know why you are being so rude to me, Mr. Dean. I have to talk business with you, whether I like it or not.
The contrast of present peace and self-denial with the rich memories of the full years that have passed. They renounced the world of men, but found that the world was not to be denied.
I gave up my vows. I finished with them up there.
I see.
I love you. I had to have the young general. I couldn't turn out the holy man. I couldn't stop the wind from blowing and the air from being as clear as crystal, and I couldn't hide the mountain.
I told you it was no place to put a nunnery. There's something in the atmosphere that makes everything seem exaggerated. Don't you understand?
Okay, so as always with our Criterion films, we will not be doing a spoiler-free section. These films have typically been out for a while and or a long, long time. So if you haven't seen them by now, that's not really our fault, but this is your warning. So if you have not seen Black Narcissus and you want to see it before listening to us talk about it and don't want anything spoiled, pause right now, go watch the movie, come back and finish listening.
That's right. Okay, so Black Narcissus was directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. It stars Deborah Kerr, David Farrar, Kathleen Byron, Gene Simmons, and Sabu. Is there another name to that, Justin? Or is...
Nope, Sabu.
Sabu,
That's
okay.
The actor's name.
Okay. Oh, yeah, he was the one from, like, Thief of Baghdad, right?
Maybe. Probably, yeah.
Okay, anyways.
Played the young general.
The young general,
I believe.
yes. Okay. The IMDb synopsis says, a group of nuns struggle to establish a convent in the Himalayas, while isolation, extreme weather, altitude, and cultural clashes all conspire to drive the well-intentioned missionaries mad.
Ooh.
Yes. How ominous.
It is ominous. Real quick, before we get started, did you watch the TV series? I don't think... Is that out yet?
It is out. It's been out and reviewed, and it's come and gone.
Okay. I never watched it. I'm just curious if you did.
I didn't. I think it's like 3 episodes. I looked into it. I even, after watching the film again for this episode, I watched like a little 6-minute comparison of like scenes on YouTube of Black Narcissus, and it looks, I don't know, it looks new. That's like all I can really say about it. Is like it doesn't look terrible. I don't know. I can't imagine stretching this out for 3 episodes,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess there are different aspects that I would not mind being, dove into.
Yeah, I guess I'm on the surface, I don't hate the idea of like a longer version. After all, this was adapted from a novel, so I'm sure like there's lots to delve into that this movie from 1947 did not.
Yeah. And this one's only an hour and 41 minutes. In my head, I was remembering it as being a longer movie, like 2 hours and 15 minutes.
It really moves.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on and a lot of stuff that this movie tackles and brings up. And so I just remembered it in my head as being pretty long. And this is short.
It is short. So, I don't know. Maybe the TV series will actually improve some elements. I doubt it, but
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I know what you mean.
Right. It's like I don't want to write off the TV show altogether for just existing and daring to be another adaptation of a movie that I like, which is already an adaptation.
True.
So it seems unfair.
Adaptation.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
The ratings on IMDb don't have me chomping at the bit to give it a shot.
Yeah. Well, we'll stick to talking about the movie then. And the poll that we did on our last episode was our favorite films that we have not reviewed on the show yet. So your choice is Black Narcissus, as we mentioned way early in the episode. Mine was Tree of Life. So this being one of your favorite movies.
And close poll, by the way. Close poll.
Yeah. I mean, both movies are pretty popular among like Criterion fans and cinephiles.
For a while, I thought Tree of Life was going to comfortably win.
Me too. I got excited.
Yeah, I even got excited. I was like, all right, here's my chance to watch it again. But anyways.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you should get us started on your thoughts on Black Narcissus since it is your favorite.
Absolutely. So this is in my top 10 favorite films. I really enjoy this film. I'm kind of setting myself up to need to like offer like extremely cool insight on this film. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to like provide anything that Justin can't also provide, but this is just a film that has never left me after I saw it. This is, I think, my first Powell and Pressburger movie. And then shortly after, I think I consumed like 4 more. This is close with The Red Shoes as my favorite one of their films. But ultimately, I go with this one because this one sort of tackles themes and subject matter that I just sort of gravitate towards more. And the fact that it was made in the 1940s is crazy to me. But it's about crisis of faith. And it's about being so sure of yourself, but then knowing deep down that you're not as sure. And you could never be as sure as you try to be, as you want to be. And it's very much a film about people deciding kind of what they want to be. What are their true selves coming out? Not to mention there's the clashes in culture, this idea of colonialism that is not a positive view, I don't think. Beautifully shot on these like crazy sets, all in the backlot in England. And this film has this sort of artifice to it where it feels like nowhere. It's in the Himalayas, but you can see all these matte paintings in the background and miniatures and all this stuff. And as weird as that might sound, or as dated and cheesy as that might sound, it's not. It's filmed so beautifully, and it allows them to control every bit of the color, the sunset, everything. And it sort of has this feel like no other movie does. I just find it really great, and man, the use of color is just off the charts. And again, late 40s, so I just feel like that is just not like when you're watching this movie, that has to be on the forefront of your mind the whole time. So I'll just leave it there because I'm sure I'll gush throughout the rest of the episode. But Justin, where do you come down on Black Narcissus?
Well, I come down very highly on it. I think it's really great. This is a film I've seen before. I don't know if this is my 3rd time. It might be my 4th. Also could be my 2nd. I don't know. Because
it's at least my 4th.
Yeah, well, I know that when we both originally watched it, we probably had a good discussion about it, and that's kind of stuck this film into my brain, forever. So it doesn't feel like one, that I watched a long time ago and I barely remember anything about. So I'm, I'm seeing it new. So I remember the film pretty well. And yeah, it's always impacted me, I think, first and foremost from a visual standpoint, as you just mentioned. It is very impressive. It's very colorful. It's very bright and rich. And I always found that sort of at odds with the darkness of the story, And
oh, yeah.
or at least the story gets dark. And I guess maybe at that time, like the film is a little bit darker, but I just remember these vivid colors and these matte paintings. And I love what you said, that like, it kind of feels like nowhere, because it kind of cements the movie into this sort of space that I have in my head for like old books that I used to read that had very like painterly cover art, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's something that, maybe this is just me, but there's something about that visual style that lends it a bit of like a tale.
Yeah.
Type, like TALE, tale type vibe to it. Not TAIL.
Oh, gee, that wasn't clear to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, you know, I love that vibe. I think the performances are another thing. Kathleen Byron as Sister Ruth.
Yeah. What an all-timer performance.
Is fantastic. And there are shots of her that have never left my brain.
Yeah, they're seared in there forever.
Yeah. It's basically the first thing I think of whenever I hear the title of this film is shots of her with her like crazy eyes.
Yeah.
Very impressive. And I think that the other thing that I find most interesting is just the interplay between David Farrar and Deborah Kerr, their conversations, their sort of discussions about what they're doing here, and, you know, her faith and that sort of the things that he says and does, even if they're not talking, just like when they're in a scene together, she's watching him and you can see that she kind of wants to
jump his bones,
you know, Yes. Well, I was going to say she wants to like turn up her nose at him,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. She
like
wants to look down
like
on him.
Man.
Yeah.
A man with his short shorts and his unbuttoned shirt.
Yeah.
You know, how dare he? Get out of here.
He has no respect for anything. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's something underneath the surface in her performance of like, she can't quite go there.
Yeah. Well,
you know,
I agree with you, and maybe jumping the gun. I don't want to trip on your opening thoughts here, but like, I think maybe she admires him, not necessarily like in like a sexual way, right? Which she does, definitely. But like, I think she admires him because he lives a life that she could never hope to.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a certain amount of jealousy there.
Yeah. What is that life, in your opinion?
One of lack of concern with societal norms, lack of concern with the culture that he's from. Certainly a lack of faith.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's ultimate freedom.
Yeah. And it seems too that he's done a pretty decent job of integrating into this culture, and it doesn't really work out so well for her and the whole convent too. There's
this idea in this movie where it's like, he represents the natural way of living, right? He does what he wants. Yeah. He sleeps with who he sleeps with. He's free. Mm-hmm. Her, on the other hand, she's fighting nature tooth and nail, and it's all about rising above your nature. So there's this overwhelming theme, even through the imagery and the setting that they're in, right? This idea of like, when they get there, nature has overgrown the place that they're going to be. They are living in a brothel where people's natural urges were sort of let loose, you know? Mm-hmm. There's sexual natural imagery all over the wall, and it just conflicts so much with this Puritan Christian idea that you have to suppress everything that makes you human and free, you know? Yeah.
And on that note, you know, if he represents one end of the spectrum, does I want to call him a shaman, but I don't really think that that's the right term.
The holy man.
The holy man. That's, yeah. Is him sitting there, does he represent like the other end of the spectrum from Mr. Dean, from David Farrar? Or is it kind of a circle?
Maybe to an extent, but you may be right. There may be something there, but I always sort of look at him as more of another like notch on the belt of why they will never get a foothold in this place. Like British people, white people, colonialists, they don't belong there. They're out of their element, right? And as evidenced by no matter what they do to this convent that they're making up on the hill, even more above them sits the holy man, which is revered by the locals more than the nuns could ever be, right? So you have this literal imagery of a higher holy power sitting above them at all times.
Yeah, and they can't live up to that.
They can't.
Right?
They can't. They're not as strong as the holy man, first of all. But also they're in a strange land where their ideals, the very Christian ideals, just don't jive, right? Like look at the young general who comes there with his outfits and his not conservative attire, you know?
His cologne.
Yeah, his cologne, yes.
Yeah. Which is the namesake of the movie.
It is, Black Narcissus. Yeah, I think all of these things sort of amalgamate to this idea that the culture, all these things are stopping the culture from accepting them and even stopping themselves from buying into the idea that they're doing any good there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. And, you know, my point with the holy man versus like David Farrar is that they're sort of these two, you know, reference points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Deborah Kerr is somewhere between the two. And if the holy man is, you know, completely dedicated, no one ever sees him sleep, eat, talk, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Just completely dedicated to whatever it is that he's doing there that he has faith in.
Yeah.
Deborah Kerr is somewhere in between. Kathleen Byron, Sister Ruth, is probably a little bit more towards David than her. But I like those. I like that reference point that the movie gives us between the two.
I agree. And I think it's fascinating that each of the nuns basically loses their mind. Or not loses their mind, but has a crisis of faith of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really fascinating is like you get that manifesting in very different ways. And the thing is, we should also caveat that they're not the kind of nuns that are like nuns for life. They have to renew their vows every year, otherwise they can't return to the order. So the stakes for these nuns isn't so much that they're turning their back on their future and like potentially leaving the church and being an ex-nun. I mean, they are, but they're allowed to.
Yeah.
So I guess the whole struggle from Sister Clodagh, Deborah Kerr, her whole arc is sort of like, is she going to give in? And because she's had an ex-boyfriend or an ex-person that she wanted to marry, and that ended up breaking her heart so much after it was implied that they were intimate, hence why she's here.
Mm-hmm.
And the stakes are so low there, right? Like she could just leave and be happy, but that's not her. She wants to be good. She wants to prove to herself that she can do this, right? The other nuns, I'm sure, have similar stories. You know, Sister Ruth is obviously the extreme example of the opposite direction that Deborah Kerr's character takes, right? Sister Ruth versus Sister Clodagh.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it highlights the idea that people who are looking for this structure in their lives, this convent lifestyle, to be a nun, they're all running from something, right? It wasn't just that they all loved God so much that they decided to be nuns. It seems like most cases, especially for Deborah Kerr, life is what led them here. Pain, suffering of some sort. Sister Ruth is clearly off her rocker at the beginning of the movie. One of the first conversations we have about that character is them being like, she's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and that's why they send her there. The fresh air, the mountain air will do her good.
Yeah, and even the more pious looking nuns that show up. What is it? What are their names?
Sister Brioni,
Brioni,
Honey.
and then
there's Honey, and there's Philippa.
Yeah, Philippa. There we go. Yeah, and so all of them seem like they have their own demons, right? It's Philippa, right, who plants all the wrong vegetables in the garden? Plants flowers instead?
Oh, yeah. Instead of that food?
Yeah. And it seems like that was a very conscious, premeditated decision to step down.
Mm-hmm.
Very bizarre. And the way it's sort of, they all bounce off each other and there's this sort of contrast to each of them. And then you have like the groundskeeper. What is her name? Aya?
Yeah.
She lives there
Something
all the
like
time
that.
with the birds. It seems like she probably would have preferred it if they'd never came. I don't know. I think it's kind of fascinating that she's sort of in touch with the people. You know, she could tell you at any given time what the population think of the sisters and the nuns in this convent, right?
Mm-hmm.
She kind of calls it, like at the very beginning, whenever she's arguing before the nuns even arrive. She's like, no one wants a hospital, no one wants a school. And that ultimately proves to be true.
Mm-hmm. They have to pay them to go there initially.
Yeah. And I understand why Mr. Dean wouldn't want them there. He probably enjoys this valley exactly because there is no Western religion or culture around. He's the exact opposite of them to an extent. Like he doesn't want to impose his will or his culture or faith on anyone, you know? he seems to want the exact opposite. So I think it's also interesting how, he can live there almost with no problems whatsoever because he just seems to understand what you do and don't when you're in a different country. You don't show up and tell them that everything they believe is wrong and that they're savages and stupid.
Yeah, tell them you need to be educated. Come to our school. Right.
It's like, why? We've been getting along just fine without you,
Yeah, which, that comes to a head with the medical treatment, right? That they
which
treat
they were warned about.
Yeah, he is explicitly.
Yeah, that exact scenario. Mr.
This.
Dean's like, I wouldn't do that, by the way.
Yeah, but which, that's the arrogance.
Yeah, exactly.
Of colonialism.
Yep, thinking that they knew better.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the movie, the main characters seem to be getting reminded of their lives before becoming nuns. Sometimes it's the mention of a stool or jewelry or, something about this place. I don't know, but it's always some sort of sensory memory, right? That kind of like sends them back. And that seems very real because it's not this mystery box that's like unveiled at the very end of like why Sister Clodagh became a nun. It's this slow build of this relationship that she was in. There's that one scene where she's running out into the darkness and the mother's like, I wish you guys would just settle down soon. And she's like, oh, I'm sure it'll be soon or whatever. And then like she runs out into the darkness, into the blackness, calling for her boyfriend, and just symbolically that shows you just sort of like everything you need to know. She never even comes out and explicitly, I guess she does to Mr. Dean, but we don't see the flashback of the culmination of her flashback, the end of the story that way. We don't see her with her heart broken as a young girl. We see her, confess and break down. And I think that's a wonderful scene too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really striking, that scene where she runs into black, which is a nice moment, I think, to just talk about the cinematography and I think this film, to my understanding, kind of made Jack Cardiff, the cinematographer.
Yeah.
Made him a name.
Yeah, well, I mean, deservedly so.
Yeah, he went on to do a ton of things, including Red Shoes and The African Queen, War and Peace.
Yeah, and did he win for this? I know he was nominated for this.
Well, that's a good question.
But I don't know if he won.
Google. Talk amongst yourselves while I Google this.
Google. Yeah.
Yes, it did win Best
good.
Cinematography.
I was going to try to fill up time, and I couldn't think of anything.
Google's fast. And Best Production Design, which those are two things we've kind of called out as one of the most striking and memorable things about the film.
Yeah, I mean, how in the world could this not be nominated and win? At least for those categories is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Did you notice that there's sort of this inherent gender imbalance here? Like, Mr. Dean is sort of implied to be like a tomcat of sorts.
Yes.
Yet he is the one depositing or imprisoning, depending how you want to look at it, this girl, played by Gene Simmons, into the convent with these nuns for being too promiscuous and behaving badly. I think there's also this sort of implied double standard there as well. Sister Clodagh seems to be a nun because maybe she went too far with the previous boyfriend who never had any intention of marrying her, and honor bound her to do so. This young beggar maid is what they call her in the movie. She is just implied to be a little bit promiscuous and doesn't necessarily, I don't know, want to be this holier than thou woman. And she's become a nuisance to the town, and so she has to be put somewhere where she won't be of danger to anyone. And I think that's kind of a little unfair and sort of a contrast to the Mr. Dean character, and kind of shows you that maybe he's not that cool of a guy also, but it's not his fault that, society is the way it is, but he's also the one putting the girl there for that reason,
Yeah. Well, there's an element of, I don't like you. I don't necessarily want you here. I don't really have any use for you unless you can take this girl we don't like off our hands.
Yeah, there is that too.
At least if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly.
Well, it just seems like the behavior that he gets to do freely, she is in trouble for in society. And she's sort of like a troublemaker.
Oh, yeah.
And sort of like this harlot, And so she has to be sent there to be more chaste. Whereas Mr. Dean doesn't seem to have that problem or anyone expecting him to be that way.
Yeah.
He just
Well,
exudes sex appeal. Like, he isn't even trying to cover himself up. He's like, he doesn't care what he's doing to these nuns.
Yeah. The shortest shorts I've seen, other than Lieutenant Dangle from Reno 911.
His shirt's open. Sometimes he doesn't have a shirt. It's just...
Yeah. Just wearing shorts.
Yeah, he's just hanging out.
Yeah, well, it's complicated. Everything's complex in this movie, and that's a thing that I'm sure was more prominent then than it is today, but it's not like we're totally past that, I think there's an issue going on with the Olympics that there's one team, I can't remember what country they're from. For the gymnastics section, they wore
right?
Yeah, they wore instead of the unitard, kind of one-piece swimsuit looking thing, they wore something with sleeves and longer leggings or longer short type things.
Yeah, how dare they?
And I think they were fined, but really they were wearing the equivalent of what the dudes wear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How ridiculous.
Yeah. Very, very silly, and very much like women should be the object of our sexual gaze,
Right.
And,
yeah.
But, if they had worn, but then they get kicked out for something, like weed, like the girl who got kicked out off the Olympic squad for smoking weed.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas another guy went in who had actually committed sexual assault. So the double standards still exist. And that's one of those things that, makes the film still interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of the Gene Simmons character, her name escapes me. I can't remember her name. But speaking of her and touching back on this idea of the natural way of doing things, like our urges versus trying to rise above, and stifle those urges.
Mm-hmm.
I like how when the young general shows up and he's like, Jesus Christ was a man. Why can't I come into your school? I'm just going to be about studious things. And they're like, all right. Within no time at all, he's seduced by Gene Simmons, right? Who represents carnal, lustful urges, right? That the whole idea, this is what the nuns are fighting against every day. And no one else is trying quite as hard as they are to fight those urges, it seems like. This film is very much about sex and
mm-hmm.
denying yourself sex and being envious of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty prominent in the film, encapsulated in the idea of the young general. The young general represents the best student they could hope to achieve. Someone who wants to be there, someone who's interested in Jesus Christ, interested in Western culture, interested in how they do things, and admires it genuinely, and they don't necessarily treat him that well. At least it doesn't seem like it. And they're not able to keep him. He's the one that wanted to be there, and they're not able to convert him. They're not able to really ultimately change him in any significant way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sort of encapsulates their failure and all their potential failures for anyone who could dare come to that school in the future, Because I doubt anyone who comes to that school in the future is going to be as well taught already and as enthusiastic as the young general seemed to have been.
Yeah, exactly. And it does not work out.
No, it doesn't. Oh, her name's Kanchi.
Yeah. I was going to tell you that. But yeah, I don't know that I have much more to talk about.
No, I think it would just be different variations of the same thing. I will say that there are a couple really creative uses of color in this film that I think are really, really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I watch this movie, I'm sort of taken aback by the transition from the scene where Sister Clodagh confronts Sister Ruth and Ruth starts screaming. Mm-hmm. And then it cuts straight to the scene where it's just pink flowers on trees. And it's so bright and colorful and just really crazy, beautiful color. And then there are two more scenes in particular with the use of red, which I find really fascinating. So first of all, a horrifying scene to me in this film, right when the music starts going really eerie and you start hearing vocals kind of chanting in the background in the music, It's the first time Deborah Kerr knocks on Sister Ruth's door and she opens it up and she's wearing the red dress.
Oh, yeah.
And that red is so scary, right? And it's not a scary scene, but it is at the same time. It's that scene is scarier to me than most scenes in most movies. And I think it's that stark contrast from these ladies have been in this white the whole time, this gray and beige colored nun clothes, right? And then this, I guess sexy, this red womanly shaped, dress that just shows that she is fallen so far and like where her head's at, you know?
Yeah, and it's that most vivid red,
Yeah,
you know,
deep
that, like,
red, like shiny, like lustful, vengeful, violent.
If red represents lust and desire, passion, violence, that sort of thing, this is the most extreme version.
Yeah, and so the first time you
right?
see that dress on screen, man, it gives me goosebumps. I don't know. I think it's brilliant.
Nice.
Okay, and then the last thing that I noticed this time with color was something really cool, and it reminded me of like a Quentin Tarantino movie almost, or like a pulpy, grindhousey type movie that Quentin Tarantino would have copied that from. It's whenever Sister Ruth, she leaves the nunnery before she goes back and tries to kill Sister Clodagh. She goes to Mr. Dean's house.
Yeah.
He pretty much just flat out rejects her. And he's like, why don't you go back to the convent and talk to Sister Clodagh, and we'll call her and we'll figure this out. And she gets triggered by Sister Clodagh's name.
Mm-hmm.
Right before she passes out, she starts to see red, like literally see red. Like the whole frame, for the most part, like 90% of the frame sort of has this red blurry tint to it while you're looking at Mr. Dean.
Yeah.
And then she just passes out. And then when she wakes up, that's when she goes on her like murderous rampage. I like how we get this like quick few frames of just red taking over her vision. Mm-hmm. And you know that she's like truly lost it.
Yeah. Well, it's taken her over, you know, like you just mentioned, we had the shot of her in the full red dress. Mm-hmm. And then this is like the red passion, violence, whatever, completely engulfing her.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. 1947. Again, people. 1947. Using color in ways that are just ahead of their time. Like, color was new. Like, this is insane. So, that's all. This movie's great.
It is great. You're right.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
But yeah, do we have anything else?
No, I don't think so. This reminds me that I need to watch the other Pal and Pressburger films that I have yet to watch.
Yeah. And I will say, before we go, it's worth noting that a few years after this film was released, England left India, like their occupation of it or being in there. So this sort of, you know, I guess reading the room, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Makes sense.
I think that's it. That was our review of Black Narcissus. I hope you enjoyed it. If we left anything out, which I'm sure we did, hit us up. Let us know. You know, I would love to talk about this movie with anyone who would like to talk to me about it. So, yeah. Okay. Cool. Right now, I guess before we end the show, let's go ahead and choose our next films or Criterion films that will be voted on in the next poll. And Justin, why don't you let everyone know what our current theme is?
Yeah, well, our theme is going to be somewhat based on the Olympics, although there's a ton of Olympic films in the collection because they have that giant Olympic film box set, but we're kind of opening it up to sports in general. So sports movies in general.
The sporting life.
Olympic films. Yeah, The Sporting Life. I don't know if we're choosing that one, but not. Stay tuned to find out. But yeah, Mike, what is your choice?
Okay, so for whatever this theme, the Olympics, I don't know what the...
Sports.
Okay, just sport. That's easier. Okay.
Yeah.
Sports. I am choosing a film that came out recently. It's a new addition to the Criterion Collection within the past few years. You spoke about this film extremely highly and made me want to watch it, and I had just never gotten around to it, and I'm hoping to remedy that this coming couple weeks with this. And I am talking, of course, about a documentary film called Minding the Gap.
Yes, about skateboarding.
Yeah, which I think is an Olympic sport, right?
It is, as of this year. This is the first year.
There we go. I knew that. That's why I went there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not about skateboarding, but skateboarding is heavily...
don't ruin the connection.
Involved. So, yeah. But cool, great choice. I would love to watch this again. I think I've seen it twice, so this would be my third time. And it would be my first time to watch the official Criterion release, because I think I watched it well before it was ever Criterion release, when the year it came out, and it was just streaming on Hulu.
That's right. So that'll be easy to watch.
Yes. Cool. Well, my choice is a film that I have never seen, but always wanted to. And that film stars Kevin Costner, and I'm pretty sure it's about baseball, but I don't really know that for a fact. But that is Bull Durham. Have you seen Bull Durham, Mike?
Oh, many a year ago. Back whenever I was a teenager and I had like a bunch of movie channels in my room, I would watch I've seen Bull Durham, but I don't know if I've ever seen it like in one beginning to end thing. I've seen like the beginning like 3 times.
Yeah.
And I've seen like the end and the middle different times. So like I've seen the whole thing. I could tell you everything that happens, but I would like to see it in order, right? And the way it's meant to be, and not just me flipping around channels and being a bored teenager. So.
Yeah, intentionally sit down. I'm going to watch Bull Durham tonight.
That's right, yeah. Instead of, like, I'll watch Bull Durham for a little bit until The Sopranos comes on, or whatever I was doing,
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well, those are your choices. A documentary and a narrative film, Minding the Gap and Bull Durham. So go to our Twitter. The link will also be in the show notes. Vote on which one we're going to cover next.
All right, and Justin, once again, thank you for being here with me, sir. It has been a pleasure.
Yes, it has. Thanks, listener, for listening. And of course, as always, thank you, Jake Wagner-Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
And with that, I say good night and good luck.
Farewell. See you next time. On the morrow.